Amazing, absolutely amazing. We are so blessed with our music ministry here at Unity on the Bay. Thank you, Kenzie, and choir and musicians. It's just been beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Ellen Davenport, Unity minister and author of the book on the 5 Principles, says, if I had one wish for the world, it would be that every adult re-examine his or her view of God at least once per decade. You know, God doesn't change, but we do. And so, traditionally, here at Unity on the Bay and in other Unity centers around the country and the world, we go back to having a look at our foundational principles in Unity, the 5 principles. And we're beginning a 3-part series now, the Living Prism, which looks at the Unity principles. Today we'll be doing principle 1 and 2, and next week Reverend Juan will be doing 3 and 4, and then there'll be a wrap-up on the 3rd week. Well, you know, there's a little bit of history about these 5 principles. Unity movement started, and it started to grow, and it started in the late 1800s. Well, about around 1921, Charles Fillmore kind of got, the story goes maybe a little perturbed. You know, well, what's Unity about? What do you believe? What do you believe? And he hand wrote 32 principles, which were the Unity Statement of Faith. And those were in existence, still are, but those were what Unity was, the working document of Unity, until 1989, when the great-granddaughter of the Fillmores, Connie Fillmore Bazzi, who was at that point the president of the Unity School of Christianity, wrote down these 5 principles that we have today. And they really summarize the basic spiritual principles, not only of Unity, but of many spiritual traditions. Sometimes you'll find the wording a little bit different in one place or another, but the essence of them is the same. And so today, we're going to have a look at those first 2 principles and what the founders of Unity saw them to mean, and why would it be important for us to know about them? How would that impact our spiritual life? And how can we put these principles into action? Well, the first principle is God is absolute good, everywhere present. Take that in. God is absolute good, everywhere present. That means everywhere, as big as you can imagine, bigger than you can imagine. We can't get my mind around God or how big God might be. But I use the word God because that's the biggest word I know, and you might put another word in there if you're more comfortable with it, but God is absolute good and everywhere present. You know, each of us has an idea about the nature of God. You know, sometimes we've learned it as young people, or we've matured along the way and evolved a bit on what our idea of God is. But you know, there's a cute little story that I love. There's a little boy that came home from Sunday school, all excited. Mommy, I learned God's name today. It's Andy. And Mom looks and goes, really? What's that? Yes, in the song. Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me, Andy tells me I am his own. So children, right? And I remember hearing certain words growing up and learning what they really were later on too. But oftentimes our image of God comes from childhood, from our parents, from that idea of God being a being in the sky that watches over us, that sees what we do. When we're good, rewards us. When we're bad, we get punished. And many of us carry with us that view of God even into our adulthood. And maybe it's time to re-examine that. Some of us have a different view of God. They have a view of God as being one of love and a loving being, and can feel that presence. And what we're about today is looking at that first principle as described in Unity. I remember when I first began my studies in Unity, one of the early classes, we were all challenged to examine our view of God. Was God a being in the sky with a long beard on the chin, Michelangelo, you know that picture on the Sistine Chapel? Or was there another way to describe God? And I learned in those classes that God is principle. And that was like a big thing, like, principle? What's that? Principle is what is, like the law of mathematics. It doesn't change. 2 and 2 is always 4. Gravity is a principle. It always is there. And likewise, God is a principle. It's neutral, and it's active whether we agree or not. Emily Cady, one of the early Unity authors, says, God is the name we give to that unchangeable, inexorable principle at the source of all existence. So oneness is the prime principle then. So there's only one. There's oneness, and it's a constant from which all spiritual and physical principles arise. Oneness means that there's only one power and one presence in the universe. There's no opposing force. There's nothing that opposes God. Charles Fillmore says, principle does not occupy space, neither has it any limitations of time or matter. It eternally exists as the one underlying cause out of which come forth all true ideas. So as we seek to put some definition on the undefinable, we begin to narrow things down a little bit to the 3 omnis that we describe as the beingness of God. Omnipresence, God is the principle of being present everywhere. Omnipotence, God is the principle of power. And omniscience, God is the principle of all-knowing. And goodness arises then out of these 3 omnis. And in the unchanging realm, the absolute realm, God doesn't change. All is one. Even as we can be expressions of God in different ways. You know, we're not all the same. But we all have that divinity within us. Emily Cady again says, God is not a being or a person having life, intelligence, love, power. God is that invisible, intangible, but very real substance we call life. God is perfect love and infinite power. God is the total of these, the total of all good, whether manifested or unexpressed. And so from this view then of our first principle, it is possible for me, for us, to see God's goodness everywhere. Everywhere we look, we can see God and God's goodness. Now, the second principle follows, and it is human beings have a spark of divinity within them, the Christ spirit within. Their very essence is of God, and therefore they are also good. So the first part of that phrase establishes our innate divine identity. Innate means it's within us. It's not anything you have to do to acquire, nothing. It's there. And it is known as the Christ Spirit. So think about it now. The thought of God created us. We are one with God. And there's no separation between God and us. We may forget, but because we forget doesn't mean it's not there. Now, the second part is maybe a little bit more of a challenge for us. The second part says, their very essence is of God, and therefore they are also good. And what that means is we are, by the virtue of our creation, inherently good. Everybody. We're not inherently flawed or broken or born in sin, or any of the other adjectives we may use to describe our circumstances or ourselves, or other people, The truth of who we are may be obscured by our life circumstances, but that doesn't change who we are. We are created by God, and we are good. And that is our spiritual nature. That is our 100% divine nature, good. Now, we may not be able to express that goodness in every moment, but we can claim an aspect of God. God is big. We got the omnis. We got everywhere present, all good. But there are aspects of God that we can utilize in our daily life. And those you might remember are the 12 powers if you haven't heard of them. They're spiritual capacities that are within us: love, wisdom, understanding, strength, faith. And we can use them as part of our I am. I am love, I am wisdom, I am faith. And that moves us towards acting in the world in a certain way. Again, Charles Fillmore says, you can begin your demonstration wherever you are. You can take it in small bites. You can say, I am life, and you will get life. You can say, I am love, and you will get a manifestation of love larger than you ever had before. You can say, I am strength, I am power, whatever you need. So take a breath. It may be a lot. It's a lot to take in, these concepts. And people spend a lifetime studying them and learning and growing within them. So, as Mr. Fillmore says, take it in small bites. And through that process, know that we can see God's goodness everywhere. Well, through this complexity and all, you might wonder, it's so far, why do I need to know this? It's just too complicated, it's too far away. But however, I believe that my analogy of all of this bigness is we have a very fancy toolkit. It's called our higher consciousness. And we may not be operating out of that 100% of the time, but we can get glimpses of it. We can learn how to use those tools in our toolbox to improve our lives in a way that creates happiness not only for us, but for those around us immediately and far and wide. You know that ripple effect. It goes far and beyond whatever we can imagine. So in that way, our life experiences, what we encounter day to day, really is in a way, it's a classroom. You know, we learn and grow with each thing that we do. And I don't think there's any one of us on the human journey that, you know, except the enlightened beings, but that has had a straight and narrow path, you know. We all lose our way at times and come back, and lose our way at times and come back. And that's part of our experience, being human. But whatever your experience has been before today, you're here now. You got through it, you're here, and you know that you have the tools within you to get through the next challenge, whatever that might be. So you might be wondering at this point, well, what about those people that we experience in our lives or that we hear about that aren't acting in ways that expresses their divinity? It actually hides them, and you go, where this is not good, right? So we can recognize in that moment that person might be acting out of fear, out of a sense of separation, out of a sense of lack. Because they're acting that way doesn't mean that their divine self, their divinity, is gone. It just means it's hidden. And they have the opportunity, just as we do, to awaken to that and to recognize that within. So a reminder, we are not defined by our mistakes or our fears or our temporary circumstances. Our inner light does allow us to rise above these challenges and to evolve into the highest expression of ourselves. So when we recognize that every person we meet has that divine spark within them, it does transform how we relate to other people. We can begin to see beyond their actions and know the truth of their inherent goodness. This moves us to forgiveness, to love and compassion, and recognize that they're doing the best that they can with the tools that they've been given, just as we do the best that we can with the tools that we've been given. And in that practice, we can see God's goodness everywhere. So how can we put this into practice in our daily lives? How can we take action on this? How do we embody that truth that God is the only power and that we are inherently good? Well, I tell you, one thing that I love about giving Sunday talks is I get to be with the material, with the topic all week long. And so this week, I took the principles and I said, God is in everything I see. I said it a lot. I said it as I was driving, as I was doing things around the place where I'm living and out in, God is in everything I see. And I breathed into that, and sat with that. And as I did that, I noticed that I didn't stay annoyed as long as I would normally. It went away pretty quickly. And I began to feel my heart open up during the course of the week. It was quite amazing, actually. Could feel that opening, could feel that presence within me. So if you're interested in trying a little experiment, we can try that now if you like. You can do that here with your eyes open or closed, using your power of imagination. And just imagine that God is in everything you see, in everything and in everybody. And just breathe into that for a minute. God is in everything. God is in everyone. God is in me. Do you feel it? Do you feel a little tingle? Do you feel a little opening? So you know, you can create this, you can return to this connection at any time. It's a beautiful practice. Okay. Another thing that we can do is we can use affirmations. We can use those words. I see God. God is in everything I see. I am one with God. I'm inherently good. I choose to express that goodness in the world today. Any affirmation that relates to this, that's meaningful for you, is something that you can use. Prayer and meditation are always part and parcel of using our spiritual gifts and our tools, setting aside time each day to connect with that Spirit of God, that divine spark that is within us, because as we do that, more and more that spark grows and grows. We begin to glow. And prayer and prayer is also what we use. Other things are loving service. We have many opportunities at Unity on the Bay for service. Many of you are active in our sacred servers and have served others in the community as well. And you can take action, honor the commitment that you made to your spiritual growth. You can attend the workshop. And I'm using the 5 Principles book by Ellen Davenport. And if you can't come to the workshop, the book is in the back. It's a beautiful, beautiful description and explanation of the 5 principles and how to use them in our lives. So in conclusion, remember, God is absolute good, everywhere present. We have a spark of divinity within us, that Christ Spirit within. Our very essence is of God. And we are also good. The short version is God is, I am, I can. I can see God's goodness everywhere. And so, as we mature along the spiritual path, we recognize that God isn't a person named Andy, but rather God is absolute good, and we are one with God, and so it is.